Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Zach here with Secrets of Longevity.com. If you're like me and you live somewhere that's cold during the winter, you know that as soon as you have to shut those windows and you can't leave them open during the day, even just a crack, your living space starts to get very stuffy very fast. You get a buildup of dust, you don't get the fresh air from outside, and it's, from my perspective, very ideal to have some sort of strategy to help keep the air as optimal as possible in your living environment. There's a number of ways that that can be done. One of the major ones is using an air filter along with an ionizer. So it's well known that obviously the indoors are much dirtier in terms of air quality than the outside. This can even be the same in very busy metropolitan cities. Might be an exception if you're like living on the main street where there's tons of car exhaust just coming up into the air. You might want to not have your windows open at that point because the positive ions, which come from polluted air, car exhaust, all these really harsh things, cause an oxidative stress on our bodies. Whereas negative ions, like an antioxidant in the air. Because when you go for a walk in a forest, near a waterfall, in the mountains, anywhere near an ocean, anywhere where there's a lot of vibrancy in nature, we know that we feel good. It lifts our mood, and there's a lot of factors that go into this. One, of course, is the cleanliness of the air. There's none of this dirt and toxins and acids and horrible things drifting around in the air and toxic gases, but there's also these negative and positive ions. So when there's an abundance of the negative ions, that denotes very good quality air. So if you live somewhere where you're going to have the windows shut at any point during the year, you want to have something that generates negative ions to simulate these outdoor places that are very healthy to be around. The other factor, of course, is the air filtration. We have the buildup of dust, gases, such as whatever gases you're breathing off, gases and off-gassing from various synthetic things we might have in our house, from carpets to paint to plastics in the shower, anywhere where you have any sort of plastic items, that's going to be off-gassing slowly over time. And by having plants for those things, as well as the air filters, we can really tackle all these different minute things and feel much more comfortable in our living environment. I've been doing this for years, and it's something I really don't like going without. So when I have to travel and I'm in a hotel room, for example, and it can get very stuffy and staticky and just doesn't feel good. Or you know that feeling where you're living somewhere, perhaps even during the summer when there's a lot of air conditioning and people want to have the windows closed. There's that buildup of stagnancy. Even if they have, in like hospitals, they have HEPA filters, which are great for removing very small particulate from the air, but they don't have the negative ions, the generators, or they don't have the same things that you can get from plants that add oxygen to the air, that add these other good things. So if you haven't seen it before, I have an older video that you can check out here, which is a link to this video, and it's got a lot of views at this point, and I can't change anything about that video, so I'm not going to be doing a new one anytime soon, but I cover a lot on the air cleaning qualities of plants as well as their ability to add oxygen back into the air. I've got a number of plants with me, and in the future I intend to add more. I've got a snake plant, I've got a Dracaena, which is starting to get bigger now, and these are some of the best known plants for removing toxins from the air, for adding oxygen back into the environment and using up your carbon dioxide that you exhale. So that's something I highly encourage anyone to do, and especially if you're on a budget. The plants are obviously cheaper than these big air filters, but if you can go for both, it's ideal to go for both. And this video is going to focus more on the air purifiers and negative ion generators. So the one I've been using for years is the Heaven Fresh XJ3800 air purifier. So you can see it's a big one. It does about a whole apartment, which is about the size of the place I have here where I'm living currently. And so several rooms. I've got a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom. So roughly the whole floor of one house. If you had a larger house, you could have 2 or 3 of these. And it's basically a 7-step filter. There's tons of other filters and purifiers on the market, so do your research. But at the time that I purchased this, I found from my own research that it was the best one that I could find. It's got, the 7 stages are The first one is obviously going to take out the largest particulate, and it's all very easily cleanable. The front just basically pops off, and anything in there you can either replace if it breaks in time or clean. So that first filter is just like a grid with not too fine mesh, which traps, hair, all the largest dust bunny type things that get sucked in through the front. Then there's a secondary filter, which is a static filter, which has these wires that are statically charged, which attracts finer dust and builds up, and so that one needs to be cleaned every few months as well. Then there's a carbon filter, which removes odors and a lot more of the fine particulate. Then there's a HEPA filter, which is probably the most sophisticated in terms of removing the smallest particulate out of the air. It can even trap certain types of microbes, fungal spores, and all these other things that we don't want circulating in our environment and propagating and causing mildew and things like that. Then number 5 would be the photocatalytic oxidation filter, and that one is one that actually reacts with the various types of microbes that are passing through it, so that there can still be some that get through the HEPA filter, and that destroys any there. And then another one, the 6th one, is the UV lamps, which is the final step in just annihilating anything that makes it through those barriers, which some things can still do, and it's just going to zap anything in the air basically. So it fries all those little bugs that we don't want coming through and spreading stagnancy and mildew, which you can't necessarily identify with your own perception obviously, but it's just comforting to know that it's there and that's working on the air all the time when you have it on. And then finally the 7th step is the ionizer, which adds these negative ions, just basically electrical charge back into the air. I've had smaller ionizers at times. I had one for a few years, which was just a small one that could basically do one room. And it had a grid on it that was statically charged, so it would trap dust, but it also had the ionizing part, and it had a very great smell that it would add to the air. It smelled like a fresh rainfall. This one kind of has the same smell. It's a little different, it's just different make, and the other one actually broke in a shorter amount of time than this one, so I'm more confident in the larger ones. It's a bit bigger investment, but there's a lot more replaceable parts, whereas that little one I just had to toss out. And for $100 for what it could do, for a little over 300, just barely over 300, I got a much better value out of this already, and it's still probably got a number of years left on it. Plus I can replace any of the filters that breaks, and it's got a number of things about it, like it senses odors and will specifically tailor itself to whatever's in the air in terms of what it's doing to zap those things. So the company that makes the XJ3800 is Heaven Fresh, like I mentioned, and there's a link below this video which you can go to check them out, and any purchase you make through that helps me out greatly in continuing to put out this solid content. And it's extremely quiet. I just plugged it in so you can hear it. It's the sound of basically moving air, and I haven't had it on all summer. I'm just putting it on for the first time today, and it's working totally fine. I haven't had it on for at least 6 months. Probably have to give it a little clean on the inside. I'll take it apart, and basically you just need to run the one grid underwater and then wipe the other one down with a cloth. And while it doesn't make that much sound, personally I don't like having it in the bedroom, so I leave it outside the bedroom and just leave the bedroom door open. Then you also don't have a light. You can always put a tape over the blue light if it causes too much light that is distracting. And as you see here, this is what I mean by the blue light. It's just got like a little thing on right here, and it tells you what it's doing. It actually lets you know when you need to replace the filter and when you need to clean the metal grid. So I've got to do both of those in sometime soon. And down here it actually tells you what it's working on. So it says there's dust in the air and that there's also some sort of odor which it's working on. And right now it's on the low setting. On the high setting, just so you hear what it sounds like, it's quite loud. I've never left it on that for very long unless there's something, like you burn something in your kitchen, you want to accommodate that. Or you can have it on auto and it will do whatever it needs to do. So actually on auto it's probably sounding like it's on medium now, although quiet's the lowest setting, which is very quiet. I'm going to leave it on low though, and I'm going to put it out in the room just outside the bedroom here. So if you haven't heard of negative ions before, there's a lot of research that's being done on them. There's actually two camps. One that says that there's no effect from these, artificial ion generators. There have been some studies from what I've seen that have shown that there wasn't any effect, but when we see studies that show both, and predominantly what I'm seeing with the ones that are saying that it's not having an effect, they're actually fairly old, from the 80s, early 90s. These studies, perhaps just the technology itself wasn't up to par, wasn't up to the standards that people thought it would be. But the newer ones I'm finding, and I've got a few links below for various studies on the effect that air filters and air ionizers can have on your health, that shows the positive benefits of it. And in my opinion, these do have an effect. And it's just an intuitive thing. So some people call it the placebo effect. The odor smells wonderful. It's like a fresh shower, or springtime, or just being somewhere with very clean air. So even if the negative ion generator did nothing at all for us, and it was complete pseudoscience, you're still getting the extremely powerful effects of the HEPA filter, all these other filters, and the UV lights and the antimicrobial effects from that. So the negative ions are just one added benefit among many with something like this. And of course, there's no disputing that the plants have beneficial effects. That's why you can always check out that video, which has been up the whole time, which even shows that NASA pioneered some of the research for bringing plants aboard space missions, whether it's on the shuttles, on the space station, and all these other things. So maybe you live somewhere tropical that it's so hot that you have air conditioning on all the time and you have the windows shut and you need to have an air purifier like this. Or maybe you live somewhere where it gets cold and you need to have an air purifier. Either way, we can all benefit from cleaner air indoors if we're going to be spending much time indoors, and there's very few people that get enough outside time. And while it's great to get outside, and I highly recommend that as a regular activity, when you're working inside, it's best to have the most optimal environment that you can create around yourself to optimize your health. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever used air ionizers or an air filter and what effect it's had on you personally. And also check out the links below, of course, because I have that link to the company that makes these. They have a number of different models. They have some higher end models now too. And also rate and share the video if you feel inclined to do so. So with that, take care and embrace life without limits.